Okay. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Hi, Doug. Thanks for calling.
Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Nice to have you with us. As we were just talking about before we got on, you are in, where are you now?
British Virgin Islands.
British Virgin Islands. Okay. And you're at your house. It looks like a lovely house. How long have you been going down there?
26 years.
Oh, long time. Yeah.
Happened quite by accident, and it's great.
Did you just go there on vacation and sort of fall in love with the place?
I did, and somebody was building a house on the beach, and they said, "Why don't you do it?" And I thought, "What a terrible idea," and I did it.
So I know nothing about the British Virgin Islands, but is it, you use pounds as your currency there?
No, it's dollars. They do drive on the wrong side of the street. Um, BVI is about 30,000 people, and we're 20 miles west of St. Thomas.
All right. Well, you're here to promote your book. Your book is called One-Legged Mongoose.
It's a memoir of the years I was 10 to 12 years old and narrated by the kid I was.
It sounds like you had a pretty tumultuous childhood. I just looked through the description of the book. It sounds like you kind of went through all kinds of stuff, yeah?
It was an extraordinary 2 years, some of it tough and some of it really good. Um, a crazy amount of things happened in that 2 year period.
Was there any particular reason why that 2 years was so bad versus the rest of your childhood?
I think it stood for a lot of things that happened in childhood. I mean, those 2 years in particular were important because it opens up. You know, my dad was an immigrant and he started making some money and he bought a little house out in Long Island and he worked in the city. And the local public school was atrocious. I'm not sure he knew that. But the book opens up when he tells me I'll be commuting 4 hours a day to a religious school in Queens, taking my kid brother. And I had no clue why we would do that. So off I am to a totally different universe. But it didn't turn out quite the way I thought. And it was different. But along the way, I really had some extraordinary trauma.
Do you want to elaborate on the trauma a little bit?
Yeah, well, it was the height of the polio epidemic. And, halfway into the book, when I just turned 11, and I'm a very active kid, and I go out, I stay out all day and go wherever the hell I want. And I was trying to walk down the steps to go out the house, and my feet wouldn't hold me. And a couple of days, we had a presumptive diagnosis of polio, for which there was no treatment. It was a year and a half before the vaccine. Makes you think about the vaccines today, of course. And I was totally bedridden for 2 months, but I was fortunate. I fully recovered. And then in that 2 year period, further along the book, I was hit by a car, but it was really, really a bad accident. It was a very close call, and I was hospitalized. I think some of my telling of it is actually funny because of the things I saw in the hospital and kind of the antics I pulled. And then I had an eye accident, but I think there's a lot of humor in the book too.
Well, it sounds like a full couple of years. I want to go back just for a moment with polio because you said that you fully recovered, so you're able to walk normally now, and did after you recovered, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I never lost the full feeling in my legs. And they didn't know what to do then. They gave me the shot. Maybe it did good, maybe it didn't. And I just had bed rest, which was awfully boring. And at the end of 2 months, I was clearly recovering. My mother had this idea I should go to the last 2 weeks of camp, which which in itself was a new experience. But I went there as a very weak kid, just recovering from not being able to walk at all. But I was the kind of kid who knew I was going to recover. So it wasn't a question of being optimistic. I simply knew I would recover. And my goal was work out, do push-ups, swim.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, I'm not an expert on polio, but it seems to me that the recovery rate from polio wasn't that great, was it?
What we learned later about polio, which is relevant a bit to today, is about 2/3 of the people who contracted it didn't know they had it. So there's a large number of asymptomatic people. You only know that once you can measure antibodies, which they didn't do in the beginning. And today, of course, we can. So the vast majority of people are asymptomatic. And of the people who get it, it's a big spectrum from very early death to paralysis, etc. And a percentage like me recover. But the numbers, I mean, that was the scare back then. And a lot of families, like from New York City, etc., they ran to the Catskills in the summer hoping to get away.
Why does polio seem to affect children primarily?
I don't know the clinical answer to that. It's a great question. And, you know, I've never been asked that. I don't know. But it's almost all, not all children. I mean, you know, I'm a cancer specialist, and there's some cancers that only affect children and some older people. And I know in that situation, we don't know why.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, Franklin Roosevelt was probably the most famous polio adult that we've ever heard of, right?
Yeah, I mention him in the book because he hid it.
Yeah.
You know, he hid the fact that he was in a wheelchair and he was totally paralyzed.
Yeah, it didn't stop him though.
It didn't stop him from doing a lot of things.
No, very true. So what was the reason for writing this book? Were you doing writing before this, or did you just, something happen and it inspired you to write your memoir?
I've published a great deal of science, lab science, clinical science. I've written a lot about contemporary art. But in my mid-40s, I had this need, which I can't even explain, to write poetry. And I began from scratch. And I've had 4 collections out, 3 with Triquarterly Northwestern. And the work was really well received. And I had never written, you know, prose like this, except science. And this story's been in my head a long time. And my mother and younger brother are key characters. My younger brother, Stephen, became a great scientist. And he knew I wanted to write this memoir, and he asked me to promise not to do it while our mother was alive. So that's part of the reason it took till now. I've intended to write this for a while.
According to this, it says your mother was a red-haired, chain-smoking, gifted pianist who used to beat you for breaking vacuum cleaner bags.
She was quite brilliant and fierce. And she left high school at age 15, just before she graduated, because between her 4 brothers and the rest of the family, she was the only one during the Depression that time who made money. And she really could have become one of the great pianists in the world. And she gave it up. It was something I could never even understand as a little kid. But she was also someone who relentlessly beat me since before the age of 2. And it was a secret that I believe my father never knew. My older sister knew and hid out. my younger brother would cringe on the floor. And the vacuum cleaner story, that was the first time she was going after Stephen. And he was just screaming on the floor, and I just jumped in the middle and told her I broke it.
So you were protecting your little brother.
I had to.
Yeah.
He couldn't have survived this. And you knew it early on. He was a slight kid, a dreamy kid, and he was the kind of kid who's a magnet for bullies. And the kids in school found him. And if they found him, I found them, and I beat the hell out of them.
Do you think your mother, all of that sort of pent-up anger was because she gave up playing piano? Do you think if she had pursued her career, she might have been a different person?
She would have been a different person, but I also think she was bipolar. And I think she was a Dr. Jekyll and a Mr. Hyde. And, you know, sometimes it would just suddenly erupt over nothing. And I was the target. And I think not playing the piano anymore was debasing herself. She would have been very different. And she took great pride that her granddaughters, for instance, are so accomplished. And now her great-granddaughters, I mean, these are spectacular women. And she knew my oldest granddaughter for a while. And my mother gave up a lot. Whether she had to give up all of it, you know, that's debatable.
Did she give it up to get married and raise a family? Is that?
I don't think so. I think she was an angry person. She was angry that she had to leave school. She was angry that maybe her brothers were lazy. I think there's folklore in the family that her mother made her work as a maid when she was 12 years old. She never forgave her mother for that and everything else. Cutting off playing piano, the way was, as we say, cutting off her nose to spite her face. She was just injuring herself.
Yeah, it's sad, and I've known other people that have given up, you know, very potential careers as artists or whatever to pursue another life, and they never were quite the same person. They sort of were almost an empty shell once they went on. Yeah,
that's partly true. When she was reaching her 70s, I used to tell her, "What's the big deal that you can watch television and win, you know, answer all these answers before everybody else?" I said, "Go to college and quit complaining." She went to college at age 71.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. She got a degree. She went for 4 years at that age.
Yeah, and she was valedictorian, I think.
Oh,
no
my
surprise.
Goodness. Well, that is unbelievable. Well, Marc, we do have to wrap this up. I'd love to sit and talk to you and you could tell us the whole book, but we want people to go and buy it and read the book. My guest is Marc Straus. The book is called One-Legged Mongoose. Do you have a website you want to give out?
I do, marcjstraus.com. It's MARC J STRAUS.
Okay, .com, and people can buy the book through the website?
They can buy it right on Amazon.com.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing.
Thank you, Doug.